well, after, like, I've just, I thought about this book after well, and some of you may have seen it. Well, 1907. I was, this, this book that see, I don't know if you can see I don't know, it's a beautiful book. It was, well, my grandma told me what to save, and well, I would read what it says, but it's, see, it's just the writing is beautiful too. I don't know where it came from. I tried to find out once, and I was just like, well, and I kept it hidden for so, I sent that rose to Deborah, you know, a long time ago. Those little angels. Let me just look at them. When there's that, well, it looks different. I mean, I can't even, well, I don't know. And then another relic from, and they use the same, I do that sometimes, but in a different way. Well, I don't know. Now I'm having this gunpowder tea. And don't get any funny ideas about that either. There were some old sutras that I remember trying to like go through the list of them. That I'm not interested in that one at all. There was just one sutra that I was thinking about. It'll come to. So I was reflecting on my. Oh, I got another message from God knows who. Well, she's frustrated. Good. Let her soul take care of children the rest of her life. Or the rest of her soul's lives. You know? I had bigger fish to fry. I mean, I have this umbrella of spirit to, like, manage. And if that means the physical bodies have to be managed by somebody else, no, they won't, though. They'll ask for help eventually. Uh-oh. I'm thinking more about what my life has cost. And maybe it's not my life has cost Stephen what, maybe it's what it's cost others. That's some burden. And if somebody would have made others walk in my footsteps, I would not be happy with that. That would be a cruel joke to play on others. I don't know. Or if others chose to do that, that would be. I didn't have an easy life. I talked about that already. And lead kindly like that. It's what that says. And sometimes I wonder if that means in kind, like treat others as you're being treated. But that's not really within my heart to treat others as poorly. Or I would give work to just about anyone. And then light, I think about what that means sometimes, like in other languages. And I know I posted that thing about affibulation and about brutality against women. And well, and brutality against little boys too. I said one day the church would open up those records and then admit what they had done. And those women that practice that affibulation are going to have to come clean about it. It was a barbaric practice, and I can see it. Like in my mind, it was not pleasant. And no one would want that. Of course, they came to the state. I told you they came to the States and then they wanted it reversed. They didn't have choices when they were that young. Then again, they say, well, Stephen, you weren't involved in that culture. And I said, I wasn't involved in that culture in that way, but I spoke up for them in other ways. You know. And maybe I was the harshest critic on Israel. Maybe I was. Maybe I was angry that they hadn't learned their own lesson, that they treated people just the way they were being treated. And of course that one war, I mean, there were other forces though at work during that war between Egypt and Israel. The United States, and well, some states have that eminent domain where you could come in and just steal people's land and say that it was for the good of the state or for the good of the country. For progress or for whatever. And a lot of things were lost. In many ways, when Israel was formed, I mean in the 40s, it was governments that came together because what had happened. Isn't that funny then that Palestine would be treated so poorly? And that while the United States gives billions of dollars to Israel, they had no political sway in the matter there. It's because they didn't want to. They could have exerted a lot of pressure on Israel. Makes me sad. And that story being true about crucifying the wrong man, wouldn't that kill Israel? To know that a Christ being had been walking the earth the entire time, looking at what they had done. And then looking at what they vowed not to do. Granted, Palestinians fought back, just like some of the Israelis or some of the Jewish people did in Poland and in Germany. You know, many of them believed that it wasn't happening to them. And I would imagine many of the Palestinians feel the same way. Can't believe this is happening to us in our own country. And our own brothers and sisters are doing it. I told you at one time, husbands and wives that married each other were shunned. And there will be a Palestinian, half Jewish, half Palestinian woman that changes that. I've seen that. And her voice will be louder than both of them. I don't know why I said a woman. Maybe it's because her children will change that area for the better. Maybe it's because she can speak from both sides of it without fear. You know. In many ways, Christianity there is just a shadow figure anyways. Christians send so much money to Israel to support them. Maybe they send that money there, some kind of blood money for what they, you know, forgiveness. I'm not saying stop supporting Israel. I think Israel needs to be supported. I'm saying Israel, look in your own hearts. Open up your temples. I mean, you'll be protected. There's so many truths there in the Middle East that are buried. And in many ways, they're just buildings. The real spirit comes from the people, you know, and no Wailing Wall or no temple or no mosque or no pilgrimage will replace what's inside each person. I always thought it was funny that they supported like building settlements really to piss the Palestinians off and to show that they were stronger and that they could suppress them. Much of the same way it happened in Germany when the Nazis gathered them up and took their belongings. Much in the same way. It's happened other places. I mean, you've seen the stories. seems like I know the stories firsthand. Settlers took land away from the American Indians, or the Native Americans. And a lot of them didn't struggle. In some ways, they knew something was changing. Some of them did. I remember this one nurse speaking about Native American education and her people, and really my people as well. All of our people. And she was sad what they had done. And a lot of those Native Americans buried their souls in alcohol. Maybe they were being haunted by spirits. I mean, their belief in spirits is pretty strong. Our souls. Maybe some of that haunted them. And then looking around. That day I walked through Little Earth over there and cried. I felt spirits around me. I guess I would challenge them too to go to a community that they don't understand and give back some of what they've taken. I'm not saying the Native American community. Even though I've seen some of them, say this is my land, this was mine, 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 mine. And yet I don't see them making changes. And to be honest, change does happen. And people may not agree with the way things changed, but it still happens. And so we can spend decades and centuries arguing about this was wronged, that was wronged, this was wronged, or build a better future for everyone. I'm still shedding some of these old memories and thoughts about really. They're not intrusive though. Well, some of them. Some of them are a little intrusive, to be honest. Even Egypt fell away from some of the grace that it used to have. Beautiful people. Beautiful people. Egyptians. And they were a lot different, 200-300 years ago, or even like 1,000 years ago. You've seen that too in like Bosnia and Serbia, brothers and sisters killing each other, and in Russia, I feel bad for Russia. I feel glad that there was changes made, but I feel bad because they should know better too. At one time, I thought about socialism, and I thought, you know, some of the early ideas were not, it was polluted. And the idea is that everybody has a purpose and that everybody contributes to a working society, even nature, isn't, it's almost like communal living. But then it was distorted. Well, you've seen it too in China and in Africa. And I do get tired of African Americans saying that they're African. Some of the African people from Africa do not get along with the African Americans. They call themselves Americans. I don't run a, I don't run around calling myself Swedish American or a Minnesotan. I guess I identify myself as an American with a multicultural background or a different kind of being, spirit. I guess maybe there aren't any words that I could describe what I am. And some of the lies about Canada, people said, well, you have to wait forever to get an MRI in Canada. You have to wait forever to get an MRI here sometimes unless you go to the ER. And then, of course, they were doing MRIs on people that didn't need them done to bill insurance companies money. I still go back to that. When I think about Iraq, I was really mad about that. Why Saddam Hussein, he was an evil, not very nice to his people. He did tolerate other religions in his country at that time. And they might not have been, well, and there was something else going on there. We know who was supporting him behind the scenes. And a friend of mine said that Iran used to be a beautiful country too. Rich with poetry and rich with education and learning. I think too about the Indian caste system. Untouchables. And they're the brothers and sisters. You know, it's funny too, like in Europe, when you ask like a European person where they're from, they usually say France or Switzerland. Or sometimes they say the EU. Or maybe they could just say, well, I'm from here. Or maybe if they just said, I'm here in spirit. You know, I bring my spirit with me when I meet people. Or I can talk to people from my spirit. I can see that fiasco in Jerusalem. It makes me ashamed knowing that I'm from the same people, that they're in my family. And the Palestinians, they're in my family. And the Christians, they're in my family. And the Hindu, and Native Americans, and a lot of others, Africans. My mom was also part English and Irish. Some French too. I don't know what it's going to take for Israel and Palestine to. I don't care, I call it Palestine. I believe in that. I believe in them. I believe if Israel gave them a chance, or if the United States said, Israel, we're done with you until you find some peace within your own country and come to terms with those Palestinians are your brothers and sisters, we're done. And then we'll take back that billions of dollars we give to you every year. Who would support them then? The Middle East might fall into a pretty ugly spot. But of course, the United States finds that there's strategic planning having Israel there and destabilizing other parts of that world. It's funny how the United States only gets involved with things that it didn't foresee happening. Or, and yes, there should be some kind of monitoring agency, and I think there are some good monitoring agencies that look after, like, the World Health. The Scandinavians are such peaceful and they understand a lot. They do actually understand a lot. And they've lived through hardships of their own. I mean, Minnesotans, if you can, like, say you survived a winter once, and that's no joke. There's colder places, but you know that it was like minus 70 last year. I wonder what it's going to take before Israel and Palestine you know, before they stop killing each other. I could watch them do it, though, and divorce myself from all feeling in it. But I always witnessed, like I told you that there were Hasidic Jews in those protests, protesting against Israel, which was strange. I was taken aback. And then at those summit meetings to talk about finances with Israel, there were snipers on top of buildings, ready to shoot Americans. Do you know when that happened the last time? Well, I bet you can imagine. Like during civil rights movements. Isn't it funny that the land of the free and the brave are the government's afraid of their own people? We're supposed to be free. And yet they need snipers to protect protest, or to protect, a meeting. There were other leaders there too in those protests. I told you I lied and said I was a photographer for Metro State. I was doing, and it wasn't a lie. And it was true. I was a nurse, so I could get a medic pass there. I still have all those things from those Answer Coalition and from the other protests that I went to. There used to be people in Uptown, protests in Uptown, and I would watch them hold up signs of people saying, "We are not the enemy." Stop killing children. And you know what war usually does? Sure, it kills people. It usually ends up hurting the children. A lot of times the people who get killed are their mothers and fathers. And then you have children growing up without parents in camps. Or in crowded conditions where they're not cared for. And you see how that cycle continues then? That hatred begets hatred. And then it's inbred into a system that can't stop. And that hatred then fuels their family. And if somebody just went like this and said, "That is your family, that is your family. Those are your brothers and sisters." I think other people have tried to say that before. I'm ashamed. Well, Minnesota should be taking the lead in that. We're such a culturally diverse state. And we fund a lot of different things. Maybe I didn't understand why those Buddhist monks were lighting themselves on fire. I know that wouldn't free their spirit. In fact, it would probably punish their spirit for taking away their gift from the world. But I think I know what they were saying. And I think they knew the risk that it would, on a spiritual level, they knew what they were doing. Which is sad. And I know that they would have been condemned outwardly, but inwardly, the rest of those monks and the rest of the Buddhist leaders knew exactly what they were doing. They would never say that. Yeah, I just had that message from them. It's weird. I mean, I could go through, like I said, I'm not a history person. I don't study history, and I don't even watch the news here anymore because I don't want to get sucked into it. I'm just speaking my own personal mind. And it's not that I haven't spoken about it before to other people. Mostly I had those conversations within my mind about things that I saw happening, and then a lot of them did happen. I got in trouble for my family and from Fiacre once for going to Mexico without him, and he had no idea why I went. I was so ashamed of the United States. I was so ashamed because I knew what was going to happen. And I needed to get out of the country. I felt better when I was there, and I went to that church in Puerto Vallarta, and I sat. I didn't go in. I don't think I went in. It's a beautiful church. It's right in the heart of the city. I don't know. And the Roman Catholic Church is going to have to answer. Some of their own fears. And if they would be honest and release some of those books that they keep hidden, some of the teachings that they don't want to share, because it would destroy some beliefs. Or it might shed some new light on some things. Maybe that there's been Christ beings walking the earth, witnessing witnessing how simple words in love can change into monsters. And be outside the context of their original intent. I know some of the early Buddhist teachings would not reminds me, let me be a light, not a path to your walk. I don't know where that came from. I just was like, but I think that's true. I think and if you see the light in yourselves, all of you, then in many ways, then you are your own path. What's beautiful though is when you come together with others on paths and you can share that experience. This is my path. This is my path. This is my path. This is my path. I once said that if I had that house that place, the best teachers are always students. It's funny. People are like, well, Stephen, why don't you get out more and walk around? And I told you before, I'm more involved a lot of times with what's going on in here and in here. And I don't need to follow somebody else's path or path. And there is no one that's going to change mine. No one. Sean says, well, Stephen, your language, and they may not understand what you're saying here because it's different. That's fine. Even my books are different. I had to take notes in some of them to be like, that's not what I remember reading in the first place. There's so many places, the Congo, that made me sick. Those women and girls being brutally raped, and I could have killed those men myself. And I am not a violent person. But I know what will happen to their souls in the next life. And they won't probably end up being victimized themselves. They will have to care for victims. And that sometimes is the worst punishment. I think some people who victimize people would gladly be a victim themselves. But to care for people they victimized, that's hard. Rwanda was another thing that I was mad at the United States again. I was mad at the world. I was mad at Africans. I was South Africa, another thing. Well, you know who settled there, you know. And they could have exerted pressure on that government to free Mandela at the time. The United States could have. I don't know if he would have left prison, though. See what happens to a lot of leaders that are a lot of people who speak their mind. I used to think this was a prison. And now I changed it into my freedom. And that probably hurts people that would like me to be silent. Japan had an interesting history too. I suppose much of that is still going on in the underground there. I can understand why countries don't like it when parts of their own country want to break free from them. I understand that. Maybe if those separatists would be allowed a better voice, and the governments recognize that regional areas within countries have amazing input. I thought I thought Minnesota should secede from the nation at one time. We have so many different voices here of so many different beautiful people, and rarely were we heard really. When Wellstone died, you know. Oh, I don't have any music on now. I just noticed that. I did see Minnesota being forefront in a lot of development in America. I wish that fighting in the Middle East or in Israel and Palestine would stop. Notice how it's three brothers there are in my world. Fighting about the same father and mother. And even further back than that, I mean, I talked about that kind of that cosmic birth cycle. I said there was probably a good reason why there weren't any early pictures of Jesus or Muhammad or the Buddha or Mary or any other creation. Early pictures were usually done of animals and of nature. What kind of animals have humans turned into? Where they kill each other over territory. I suppose they are animals then, aren't they? And I have to admit, at the time, remember what I said about filters? About looking at things? About how the news always made things look so much worse? I actually spoke to people, though, and heard their stories. Sometimes it was in the oddest places, like in the emergency room. Well, that's because I cared enough to dig underneath what they were there for. A lot of times it was a toothache that was masking all the inner pain that they were experiencing. Not many people cared to ask that, though. You know? I hope you do watch that video about female genital mutilation. It's horrible. And I've noticed over time, and other people have too, you know how nuns used to wear habits, and then they started wearing regular clothes? And then they realized that it's not in the habit that their spirit is, it's in their being. And they can walk around among you, among everyone, undetected in their spirit. Isn't that beautiful? How, people walk around in their spirit, in their belief. That's weird, isn't it? I've never really looked at somebody. I guess maybe I have, because I have looked at people and said, it's because that's what costume they're wearing. I've looked at people, though, and said, you know, they have inner beauty and devotion. and faith. Right now I have faith in Stephen Philip Lindquist. And I have faith in other people that they're on their own path. I don't judge. I don't judge them. I do think it's ridiculous that they fight and kill each other over nothing. Over land and misunderstandings and what spirit means. My spirit should have been broken when I was a little boy after living through torture and abandonment. And I never did. I never let my spirit get broken. It's not broken now. And others can keep putting me down and rejecting me and rejecting me or rejecting Stephen. And I will talk about me as being Stephen. And when other people say me, that'll be them. So when I speak of you, me, and I'm speaking about Stephen. And when you speak about you, me, and I, you speak about yourself. The Sisters of Mercy. Savannah, I thought that was you. The Sisters of Mercy. You know? Not the band of my mercy. And a gift. To somebody who had lost a lot in her life. You know? And in the beginning, I said I never wanted to take you guys away from your mother. I don't. She couldn't hear that. From her own, whatever she was going through in her own life. Maybe she was coming to terms with her own inner life. In many ways, maybe she was doing much of what you did, Stephen. She was looking for something. And maybe she still is. You notice how she got more confident. She started cooking better, looking for more education, looking for spiritual outlets. I see that now. So I don't blame her. It would have been beautiful to have been able to have done that together. But that's not the way it was supposed to work. I don't even know this place. I know my world was a lot different than this place. My world, I would have seen things different. I would still warn them. I think about some of those laws where they actually cut people's hands off hung men and women for being human and loving each other. And I hate that. I would never be a part of that. See how a lot of the laws. Hold on. Oh, 1 minute. Oh, I'm gonna make some tea. Hold on. Well, I had to shut the outside world off because they were making too much noise over there. Um, I would never be a part of that. I spoke out against it. Yeah, other people did too. And then there were people who wanted it, mainly because they had been raised and believed to believe that was the right way, and it wasn't. Again, those were their brothers and sisters that they were killing, their mothers and fathers, aunts and uncles, grandparents. You know, who does that? Not Stephen. Sean's like, well, you're going to have to leave. You know, always telling me to leave. You know? I say I'm always in the right places at the right time. I don't even know why I should go to this court thing. I should just let her sit there empty without me there. I know it's not her in there. It's not Stephen either. I mean, I'm not sitting in her position. I know people would like to confuse you, Stephen, about that. They would like that. To have you take all the blame. That's why they call you sir. It's not a sign of respect. It's derogatory here. Especially when women say it. And we're not in the South. Do you know what Native Americans do? I do. When somebody's spirit is damaged, I'm not here for Stephen's damaged soul because it was never damaged. Might be here for some other damaged souls. Oh, this. Hold on. Yeah, so I'm still getting. I feel really good. And I'm glad. I hope if Israel and Palestine are listening, that you meet and you make peace now. One of these days, if humanity doesn't, someone else is going to come in and say, you've watched too long enough. These are going to be our rules now. And then I saw where that would go too. I saw exactly where it would go. It goes the same way everything goes like that. It goes up like this, and then it comes down. If there would have been truth in the beginning, and I'm talking thousands of years ago, things may have been different. But that's not how they went. And there's no undoing the past. You either learn from it, or you're going to repeat it again. And I'm not talking about you, Stephen. I'm talking about people who like to believe in lies because it makes them more comfortable or makes them feel more safe. The only safety in lies, or there really isn't one. It makes you feel better. But then when the truth comes, then I said some once too, well, not that long ago, that when the truth does come, it'll be hard in the short run or in the short term. But in the long run, I'm not talking about track and field. I'm talking about this idea that in the long run, when humanity realizes that they've all been the same people, that something beautiful could come. Some amazing discoveries. And not like discoveries of science, and that would happen too. I mean, discoveries about the beauty in each other and the great destruction in each other. And they would still be fighting, I'm sure. But over time, that would be weeded out. Do you know how much better I don't want to use words like better or good or maybe wisdom. You know how much wisdom could be gained by working together? Or how much energy could be harnessed from a collective spirit? You know, everyone or all people on earth realizing that their own hatred of each other and of their own family has slowed down their progress in the world, in the and basically in the cosmic universe. Maybe then it wouldn't be so hard to believe that there's beings outside of the earth that could be friends with them. Sometimes I think governments knew. It's funny how only a select few people know some things, and even some of the presidents haven't known. Hold on. I know what you're thinking. Sean said, well, I turned the world upside down for you, Stephen. But I'm not talking about family dynamics within my own family of my dad, my mom, and I'm talking about way back when. And I'm just, and these global politics, and I'm not talking about them. I know many of you might think that I'm talking about Douglas and Donna and Linda and Paul and Tara and Savea and Mia. I'm keeping Savea and Mia out of it. And you're right, Stephen, it might hurt you. And you probably were right. Tara does need to heal her soul. And she might need those physical bodies to do that. And if there is only one woman here, or one lady, then they're all going to have to learn that lesson about healing those two innocent girls, Savannah and Mia. They might have to take a lot of effort and time to work for their behalf, to help them heal, and to hear some truth from their father. Well, back to the geopolitical structure of the earth. Who knows? I center that information or that talk around Israel because in Palestine, because a lot of hatred and animosity came from there. And I saw it happen. And I don't think it was an accident. I don't think it was an accident at all. I think other people were influencing it. And you can imagine who they were. These tea bags are always so funny. It's curious too sometimes when we think about the Orthodox religions or why they split from traditional Catholic Church. And why there's splinters within the Jewish population. It's true, no one wants to see their kids go to school and have to have, bombs go off. No one wants that. No one wanted that in Nazi Germany either. When the Jewish people resisted in Nazi Germany, they called them freedom fighters. When Palestinians fought back, they called them terrorists. Some Jewish people knew that Jewish people were doing the exact same thing. They were breeding hatred into a population of millions of people, much like Nazi Germany did to them. And you see how the abused became the abuser. Sean said that to me. I know there's people behind the scenes that have been secretly working to try to heal some of the earth wounds. And they meet in secret. Maybe I've met a lot of them. Trying to connect to that, earth energy that is trying to change things. It was good that Pope Francis got elected. Maybe he'll be a light that sheds new spiritual growth for the Catholic Church. Preferring simpler, like I always said in the church, it's not the main chapels that are the beautiful ones. It's the plain ones. It's not the rich seats that people sit on in their $1 million homes. It's the park bench. You know. I don't even know where my mind is sometimes. Thinking about a lot of different things. And some people are like, well, you're just a little boy from, you know, Minnesota who grew up in Santa Rosa. You know, who had a family farm in Savannah, Minnesota. What do you know about anything? I can put all those pieces of world politics into my life. Say, my mom abandoned me. My dad fought for me and gave up. Other women wanted to adopt me, bring me into their family. I was abused more by other people. And I kept raising myself up off the floor where they kept dropping me. And I fought back, just like I always do, by any means possible. And if that's just by talking, using innate magic that I know I've always had, leaving people I love because I have to. But Sabea and Mia, I will never give up on you. I said that. There is no place in time or space where I won't try to find you. Because I love you, both of you. I can't go to the past for you, though. I can't change what's already been done. No one can. There's something about the act of trying to undo the past would actually undo the act itself. And nothing would have been different. And maybe there's some mathematics in that, or maybe it's just something that I know in my heart is true. So I'll continue talking to you. I'll continue talking to you. And if I have to tell you day by day by day what I'm doing, I will. I was sitting downstairs and I was reminded of this Himalayan, a movie I saw once, a documentary. It was beautiful. Simple, amazing people. I say simple because they lived simply, except it wasn't simple at all. It was a hard life. And they rode horses. Makes me think about technology. And I know some people are really, things would be simpler if there wasn't technology. We're talking about growth, though. I love the forest, and I love nature. There's a place for technology in that. For one, it gets messages, it gives people a voice to be their own reporters, to be their own historians of their story. And one day there'll be, I can see one day there being planets of just forests where people will go there or live there if they don't wish to have technology. Not that they would be isolationists, but they would just choose not to, but welcome people as visitors. I don't know where I would live. If I would live in the forest, or if I would live in, I could be happy in both. Okay. So, I was thinking about that too again. Marijuana laws. How much money we spend on imprisoning people for that, for small amounts. And not that I would not smoke it myself. You know. But some places even like outlaw hemp, which is a pretty good natural fiber, and a lot can be done with it. You know, I don't understand a lot of it. I never did though. I never was like, alcohol kills more people than marijuana ever did. And alcohol is legal. Drunk driving, cirrhosis of the liver, treatment costs. This little guy. Treatment costs, divided families. The worst thing I ever did when I was stoned was watch TV. No, sorry. Or think really deep thoughts. But I really quit smoking marijuana when I left Wilmer. Not that I didn't every once in a while, but that was 20 some years ago. I told you it affected my hearing in a strange way. And my ability to write. Because I would get lost on a word. I would be like, and then I would go look at it again and go, wasn't for me. And then you think about those small towns where they have 3 or 4 bars and a liquor store and 75 people that live there. And then there's countries that outlaw alcohol and suppress freedom. And then they have angry people. Angry people. And they wonder why people riot. Talk about Cuba for a minute. Cuba used to be a beautiful place. I knew people from there. They spoke so passionately about how beautiful it was. They were amazing poets from there. I used to read some of their work in Spanish. I should try to find some of those. I wrote down I copied some of their work. I copied down some of the poems that I really liked in Spanish. That's gone now. I remember, I was just thinking about that too, about Zaire and Zaire, when they were two separate countries. Yep. Sorry, the screen went dark. I guess what I'm trying to say is that every once in a while I feel like somebody flies me back to the earth to like look and see it's still the same. They're still doing it. You still see those camps in the Sudan. Starving people. Animal poaching. Safaris to hunt. Animals that used to run free. They will lose a lot of precious species of animals if they're not careful. We've already seen it in a lot of places. And not that that doesn't mean that that's how nature goes, because it does sometimes. And I already said they have DNA samples of all of them stored in laboratories around the world. Pretty much of every species on the planet. This used to break my heart too. The University of Minnesota wasn't allowed to do stem cell transplants. Wait a minute, not stem cell. It was a heart thing. There was promise in that at one time. I wonder why people have such a high moral code for some things, but then think it's okay to kill their own family. You know? I don't know. A lot of time those voices are silenced. Or maybe they're not silenced and no one understands what they're saying. And they've been saying it for a long time. A long time. A lot of them say it in Hollywood. Sometimes maybe it takes one person from, a small town in the middle of Heartland to reach out to them and say, my life has cost, well, in Minnesota, my life has cost millions of dollars since the state of Minnesota paid for me. And I reject that even now. I reject it. I feel like an outsider in Minnesota. Like I don't belong here. An outsider in my own family. It's par for the course of my life, though. I ask Lynn again what she's thinking. I'll ask Lynn and Eric what they're thinking again. It's the different talks, so got different energy here. Yeah. You've said that before, Eric. I told you which one I would feed. And then we have talked about that. Well, I suppose if you had to help me somewhere, it would be here. Stephen's Day is going to be... Well, that's true. That's not, but that is true. And I don't mean Stephen out there. I mean, I'm the only one that can play that part. Or who has wisdom enough to know what it means on a different level. I told you before, I really don't even need these. I like looking at these cards. I kind of know what Lynn would want. Yes. Stop it, Lynn. I think I understand what that means, though. I know what Barb would want too. Eric's mom. She would have always wanted the truth to come out too. She shopped around for organic food that came from community farms or smaller farms that had spirit in it. You know, she probably knew them or knew their work. And that's beautiful. I'd said one time, how can things be organic when the water that's feeding the clouds are polluted with chemicals from farms and from runoff from streets and garbage? And it's in the atmosphere. Yes, they can be certified. Not they should be called. We don't use pesticides. And since all food is organic, do you see what I'm saying? And they charge more. I suppose it's more work. They lose more crops probably. I remember picking those potato bugs. If anybody's ever done that, you know it's not fun work. But I wanted to do it. I think I'm going to find something to videotape today. Besides me talking about like religious structures. See how I call them religious structures? They built temples to spirits that are freely available just by going outside or sitting meditation in your room. I have these religious items. I assign spiritual meaning to them though. And yeah, sometimes I look at them and I talk to them like, what do you think? And then I'm like, oh, I already know the answer. What do you think? And I don't care if what Sean said about turning the world upside down, I don't care if it's upside down. I will still speak my mind. I would speak my mind in hell or in heaven or in any spiritual level and realm. I would still say the same thing. You know? Somebody once said, well, Steve, you have everything. You're so hard on yourself. You know? And I say I have nothing. I have Sean and the cats here and some good friends, people that I met in the building. Nature. I have a voice, an outlet, even though it doesn't look like anybody ever looks at it. A lot of this work is an inner work that needs to be like And there's lessons in it. Not so much for, but people who need to hear it. I would sit down with the Pope and the head of and the leaders of the Jewish temples, anyone really, and go head to toe with them. And I might not have studied any of I might not have been a priest in this lifetime, or a rabbi, or, any other leader. I just might be a simple boy born in Hutchinson, raised in Lindquist for a short time, and then grew up in California and moved back here. But I would argue with them for an eternity about how petty and wrong they are. I know this one's going on forever, but it's alright. It's only 9:35. I'm trying to think of some other areas. Well, I might have told you what I thought about the Knights Templar and that story, and what might have really been the truth about it. And I am looking for friendship. I'm looking to make peace with those people there. They need to see light, the light inside themselves, and the spirit inside themselves. I was right. You know what? That might destroy belief for a little while. But think of what that could do. Think of what's been built on discovering things in the past and saying, oh wow, we found this fossil and explains this whole, or we found this writing and this explains this whole entire mystery. Think about what that would do there. They found those, mystery scrolls, or the Dead Sea Scrolls, or there were some other scrolls that they had found once. Of course, they didn't want to share them with people. Of course, there were some people who told. I hope the church, the Catholic Church, opens up their libraries. Can you imagine all the secret hidden works of art and beauty that they have? Not that people should be going down there thumbing through it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just make it available. It's already documented. You don't think those librarians in there haven't documented every piece of work in there digitally? What a beautiful church that would be. What's funny about that too is They don't have to change their belief structure. They just need to be honest. Talk to the Jewish and the Muslim brothers and say, we're all from the same family. And the Hindu family. I mean, we're all from the same family. And it's okay to have different ways to worship. I like going to different places and seeing how they worship. I like also worshiping in here and in here. Well, and in the kind of the energy fields around me. And in nature. Maybe Tara did get what she wanted. Maybe she wanted to expose me beyond belief and know my inner workings, my mind and my heart. Maybe that's what she wanted. That comes at a price, though. Not a monetary price, but a soul price and an emotional price. Because she'll one day realize that she lost a beautiful man. And much of it was her work, her own doing. And that can never be again. I think she knows that. I wouldn't let her sacrifice anything first, even though God forbid that. She's going to have to live with that. And that's not a judgment on her. There's so many times in my life where I've seen people do things. I've seen them change. And I thought, they still have to live with that. Somehow they manage, though. Somehow they come to terms with it. I know other people that have been riddled with guilt their whole entire life, and they can never move past some things. I have no need to move past any of my guilt in my life. I don't have a lot. I used to say this, and this is what I said a long time ago in the 90s. If you're going to feel guilty, don't do it. And then it was already too late. And then I had to look back on what I said and be like, I guess I was supposed to do that for a reason. And that doesn't mean that I don't feel what I did in the past, because I do. But that guilt, I've had to move past guilt in my life. You know, and past pain, really. And that really, well, when I was little, that was really hard. because I wanted to feel it. And then I would settle into a comfortable environment and I'd be like, but then I would always be forced to relive it. And that was difficult. That was difficult. Like we'd have these staff meetings and I would be forced to go from being a happy little boy to be stuck in a room with people who all they did was hurt me and they made me sit there and be around them. In many ways, I thought maybe they were trying to get you comfortable again in that. How can you be comfortable speaking to somebody when you're face to face with the very person who hurt you the most? And then to think, for one, let's just say there was a social worker, a counselor, and then my mother or another member of my family. And then you put a little boy in that situation with 2 or 3 people who he has no reason to trust, and then talk about plans for the future as if he wasn't there. You know, that is not easy. And I remember acting out in those meetings and saying I did not agree with anything they said. And they would set goals. Goals for a 9-year-old. Do you know what my goals for a 9-year-old would be? Have fun. Be a child. You know, play. Worry about goals when you become an adult. You know. And then they would grade me on how I did. And of course, sometimes I failed. You know what happens when you fail a child for being a child? It reinforces that behavior, that they are a failure. Do you know what I mean? How can you grade a child on more family interaction when you're stuck in an institution and your family doesn't participate? As a 9-year-old, when I was or as an 11 or 12-year-old when I was at the state hospital, family will be more involved in their life, in your life, Stephen. Well, they didn't come to see me. And you get a lesser mark for that. Like it was my fault. Do you see the logic? Do you see the harm in that? And they did teach me to be dispassionate too. You know why? We talked about our feelings right away. And I can move on. And maybe not dispassionate, but we talked about them right away. Sometimes they didn't like what I said. And sometimes I told them to fuck off. Maybe that's because that's how they treated me. I told you they used to punish little boys and girls. Well, I'm talking about in the group home and well, even in school. They used to make you sit in the front of the class. And you were so smart, Stephen. They called you a distraction. Remember? Your driver's ed teacher sent you to the principal's office. And you threatened to sue the school. And the principal sent you right back to class. He said my hair was a distraction and other students couldn't learn. Of course, then it was that walk of shame down to the principal's office for hair. It grows back. Or the color changes. Be more concerned with the quality of your work and the spirit you put into your work than the color of your hair or the clothes you wear. How much of your soul you put into your, to your assignments and stuff. I had friends that knew they were picked on too. They were a great source of strength for me too, though. They were like, I knew that there were others that were expressing their own, and that wasn't easy in Walmart. I said at the group home, they used to make you sit on the bench for hours. What does that teach a little boy or a little girl who has inner problems? What does punishing them more teach them? Nothing. That's what they used to do, though. Sit on a cold wooden bench and just sit there for hours. Or they would lock you in the day room and say you couldn't leave the room, or you can't talk for the next 2 hours. Or you can sit in seclusion for crying. Isn't that strange? And they were professionals. They were trained men and women. They were trained to care for children. And that's what they did. I told Sean that I was trained by professionals, and he got upset with it. He said professionals. He's right, they weren't. They weren't. I do, and I rationalize their behavior. That's what they knew at that time. That's what they knew at that time. They wondered why I ran away from the state hospital. After nights when I would say things like my stomach hurts and I don't feel good. people are hurting me, and then I'd run away with other boys that were being hurt too. I won't rat them out. I would never tell on them. I wouldn't tell on the boys that I know that were being hurt too. I remember we had to walk in those tunnels in the state hospital. There were bad things happening down there. And it was scary. We got over our fear though, because we would go together. And there were boys and girls that tried to jump in the lake and run across them because they wanted to die. It was that bad. There were good people though. There were some good people there. Some staff that were really good. I have to say, Newt, thank you so much. You don't know what you did for me. I learned to play cards there. I used to play pinochle with the staff. I guess we always played cards. Euchre. Even at Varnon we did. I used to have those fluorescent velvet photos, or those posters, above my bed at Varnon. Brenda was so nice to me. We went on a lot of trips there. I got my records from Dick before they would have destroyed them. There weren't very many, though. I don't know if he gave me all of them. I don't think he did. Because the amount of time I was there would have been a stack this big of daily logs. It's probably for the best that he didn't. Like I said, it was at home, though, not an institution. I saw what that became over there. I saw that girl in that room, in the seclusion room. And they were afraid that I would tell my story or just be a presence there to, like, say, I know what you're going through. I also remember in Minnesota when they deinstitutionalized the state hospital. It was a good thing. And they did it slowly. But some places they did it rapidly. And then they left a lot of people with some serious, well, you know, I believe in mental health, so I believe it's that spectrum. They had some serious health issues. And maybe they mainstreamed them too fast. A lot of them fell through the cracks and they didn't know what to do. Hospitals became their homes because they were too sick to be on their own, or they didn't have the right support structures. I worked at that place, at Bristol Place. I felt responsible for those guys. They would call, when I left, other staff would call me and be like, Stephen, or the patients would call me, or the clients. And I've seen one guy, I asked him how he was doing. It's amazing with some mental health disorders what people remember. I let people diagnose me with mental health disorders. They had to. Otherwise, I couldn't have been seen by them. Like I said once, I knew well enough. It's not like I haven't studied it. We used to give the MMPI to people in class and grade at each other, or look at it. My own psychology can't be used against me. My own beliefs won't be used against me. I don't blame anyone. I never will. And I told Sean, I wrote him this thing that I am guilty of living a human life. I'm guilty of loving when I probably shouldn't have. I'm guilty of sharing my thoughts and protecting people that I thought needed a voice. You know, I'm guilty of offering my heart to places it shouldn't have been in. I'm guilty of hearing both sides of the same story. See how I'm hearing the same story? And they're the same side. I'm guilty of loving two small children more than the world itself. And that won't be used against me either. I'm guilty of learning that I could watch millions and billions of people be destroyed and then turn away. I'm guilty of that, probably the most. You know, and I'm guilty of staying in silence a long time. I'm guilty of running when love was there, but it wasn't right for me. I'm guilty of protecting my own heart. I'm guilty of speaking my mind. I'm guilty of seeing different perspectives and then following my own beliefs. I'm guilty of trusting people that I shouldn't have. You know, and I'm guilty of walking paths that I needed to. I'm guilty of knowing that I will win no matter what. And that's not win in the sense of winning and losing. There is nothing that will break my spirit. And no one. I'm guilty of having dreams that no one ever saw. I'm guilty of sharing information that helped other people because they needed it. I'm guilty of seeing the beauty and destructiveness of nature and listening to it. I'm probably guilty too of saving cursed objects and taking care of them like they were blessings. I'm also guilty of the ability to feel anger, forgiveness. I'm guilty of a really long memory. I'm guilty of leaving places that people wanted me to stay in. And I'm guilty of being Stephen Philip Lindquist. And so proud of that. And I don't care what anybody says about that. You know? No. And I won't change. I will not. And if you don't like that, then you don't belong in any kind of world that Stephen Philip Lindquist would see happen. I'm guilty of having my own beliefs and my own spirit, my own spirituality. I'm guilty of recognizing that these beings here are these representations of my family, are lies. I won't be guilty of being anybody's judge. And I stand so far beyond that.